I was like, oh.
Lynn, can you hear us? Can you hear us, Lynn? Yes. Perfect. Okay, perfect. You are ready then. All right. Welcome to the September Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. We are going to start today's meeting of the group. We have that opportunity if you want to start, and then we'll just move this way. Just state your first and last name.
Okay, Tony Levison.
Jeff Wall.
Heather Simmons.
Ian Grasp.
Mandy Dalrymple.
Ian Schmidt.
Helen Silfen. All right, thank you. So then I will open for public comment. I do want to note that if you are here to comment about the caper, for that to be recorded with the caper, you might want to hold that comment till we do open that public hearing. But otherwise, if we want to open it to virtual first.
Yep, we do have one.
Okay.
Anne Brayfield.
Anne Brayfield, you have the floor.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
Great. Good afternoon. I wanted to make a couple of general comments. I'm very concerned about having affordable housing in Bend. I've been pretty active with that on our own, as well as have been to some of these meetings earlier on. And I've more recently been involved with a project that was recommended to council by this group to be funded to create some more affordable housing. And as I've gone through that process with the person who was the first time home buyer, I have learned a few things, and it seems like it'd be very important to me that in addition to vetting groups that are applying for funding, that there be a mechanism for looking at the product after it's been built and so on, and something beyond just, okay, it's up to code, the code inspectors have been out. There's a lot more to know than what code is going to pick up. And so I would like to see this group or council, or I'm not sure where this would happen, to actually look at the product that has been produced. Because I will tell you that the most recent project that I know about is not up to a standard that I think the city should be accepting when they're giving out the kinds of funding that they're giving out. And I'd be happy to talk in more detail with someone there about this. And the other thing is, I think vetting for conflict of interest is also very important. When you have nonprofits that are applying for housing, but they're one and the same as the person building the project, as the developer in the project, I think that that is potentially an issue. So I'd like to learn more about that and to suggest that there be a very thorough look at any conflicts of interest. So thank you very much for the work you're doing on this very important part of our community.
Thank you, Anne. I do want to say that we as council members, are invited to a number of the affordable housing communities once they're built. I don't know if staff has anything additional to add related to conflicts of interest or the vetting process for our applicants.
Yeah, I think, Anne, you're welcome to email staff and we're happy to follow up with you offline. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. Was that everyone virtually? Okay. Anyone here in the office have anything for public comment?
And then before we conclude, Chair wanted to remind the group that there was testimony from the Bend Chamber. Just that should be around. Hopefully, Dina has those copies for you if you haven't seen it.
Yeah,
And
wondering
if anyone's online, we can email them to you.
Yeah, this, if you guys have not read it yet, it is related to the TIF that we will be hearing about on the agenda today.
Chair, would it be appropriate for us to revisit this letter when we get to that topic?
No other public comment? Okay, closing public comment for today. And then did everyone have a chance to review the June and July minutes? Yes, yeah. Okay. Do we have a motion for approval of the June minutes? Do them separately.
I move to approve the June minutes as recorded and shared with this committee.
I'll second. This is Heather.
Okay, and can I get a vote for all in favor?
And Allison is voting online.
Yep, I'm here. I don't know why my video won't appear, but I'm listening. It
Okay,
says the host has stopped that, so
all right.
I'm good either way.
And then secondly, to approve the July minutes. All in favor? Oh, no, sorry. Can I get a motion?
I will motion to approve the July minutes as they were recorded.
I'll second. This is Ian.
Thank you. All in,
Schmidt. Long pause.
Ian and Ian. All in favor? Allison.
And Allison, you should be able to start your video now.
Motion passed. And then we do have a system development charge, SDC waiver that we're going to be looking at. So now is the time to state any conflict of interest or perceived conflict of interest related to that. So I'm just gonna go from.
You want me to make the spiel that one?
I would love you to lead the spiel, Elizabeth. Thank you.
Yes.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Elizabeth Oshel with the City Attorney's Office. So this is the time for you to disclose if you have any actual or potential conflicts of interest with the agenda items before you. So a potential conflict of interest is if what you're discussing could have a financial benefit or detriment to you, a family member, a business with which you're associated, or a business with which a family member is associated, or a client of your business. You have to declare it and you can continue to discuss or deliberate or decide on the matter. An actual conflict means whatever you're discussing would in fact have a financial benefit or detriment on any of those types of entities or people that I just described, and you have to declare it and leave the dais for the discussion. I think everything you're talking about today is just recommendations, so we'd be in the potential conflict land.
So thank you. Does anybody have any questions? No, okay. All right. I will start from left to right.
I don't have any conflict of interest. This is Helen Silfen.
Ian Schmidt, no conflict of interest.
Mandy Dalrymple, no conflict of interest.
Ian Kras, no conflict of interest.
Heather Simmons, no conflict.
Jeff Wall, no conflict of interest.
Tony Levison, I don't think it's a conflict of interest, but I was the developer for Daily Estates. But I have no financial interest in it anymore.
Okay.
And Allison Hohengarten, I have no conflict.
Forgot about that. Sorry, Allison.
That's okay.
All right.
So, if it's okay if I jump in.
Go for it, Lynn.
So this is a Habitat for Humanity development in Bend. Staff are recommending approval based on the guidelines presented to us. What's different, and I can't remember if you all, I think you've done one of these before, is that you no longer need to approve SDCs for the city of Bend for qualified developments. Those are now automatically built into the methodology, which is a really big deal for development. That is not yet true for Bend Parks and Rec, which is why we're here. So they are following the same protocol that we set up years ago in approval and following your recommendation in approving SDCs. They call them waivers, as we call them exemptions. But staff do recommend that this development is approved for SDC waivers from Bend Parks and Recreation District. And you all should have that motion language and backup information in your packet.
Can you remind me where we're at on our count on these? I believe we have a specific number.
Yes, I don't have that off the top of my head, but I do know that we have quite a few more after this.
All right, so and Habitat for Humanity, they plan to develop 9 townhomes for affordable homeownership. 5 of the townhomes will be 4-bedroom units and 4 will be townhomes. 4 of the townhomes will be 1-bedroom units. So the parks waiver is requested at $68,949. And I feel like we had a few of these left last time we talked, but I don't remember off the top of my head. Does anyone want to move to recommend this?
This is Heather.
I will move to recommend Bend Park Recreation District to waive SDCs for Bend Redmond Habitat for Humanity affordable homeownership development.
Get a second?
This is Helen. I will second.
Thank you. All in favor? Motion is passed. We didn't say that if the waivers are not exercised before any expected increase, the increase will be added to the total waiver. Can I move to make a motion to add that to the original motion?
Yeah, second.
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
She's way in the corner.
Do I have a second?
You have to make the motion first.
Oh, sorry, that's what I thought I was doing.
Well, you have to state what it is.
I move to make the motion to add to our previous motion. If waivers are not exercised before any expected increase, the increase will be added to the total waiver regarding the Bend Habitat for Humanity. Walter, Daily Estates Walter Meadow Townhomes.
I'll second.
All in favor? Motion passed. Okay, so next we are going to, thank you. We're going to hear about the Bend Urban Renewal Agency TIF Assistance Program. So Jonathan is going to share about that. We have about 10 minutes for this.
All right. So on June 5th, I came before you to present a 3-pronged option of what the TIF proposed program would look like. Your recommendation on June 5th was to be simple, to flush it out and to come back with a more detailed approach. And that's what we are intending to present to you today. So the question that I have for AHAC is, after previewing the proposed policy, would you like to provide a recommendation to the Bend Urban Renewal Authority or agency in their consideration of this policy for next Wednesday? You do not have to do it, but if you would like, you may submit a recommendation for that. In your staff handout, you received a policy justification document that I'm not going to go into detail through this presentation, but it's a full comprehensive report that I did on behalf of the Bend Urban Renewal Agency of where our affordability is at, what is the unit production occurring for multi-unit family housing, and what is the long-term projection of that development. So what we're trying to do and what the Bend Urban Renewal Agency has tasked staff to accomplish is to either try to lower rents or encouraging good paying jobs locally. And so how do we intend to do that? We intend to incentivize livability through tax increment financing. I'm not going to get into that, but that is the financial mechanism of urban renewal. So that policy document that you have that we presented to you that went through Rachel is the basic summary is this: 8 out of 10 jobs median wages, and nearly 50% of households cannot adequately afford market rate rent for a multifamily unit in Bend currently. So that is the issue that we're trying to solve today. There are 3 key policies that are being proposed within this broader policy. We have a base policy, we have more of an enhanced policy, and we have a good paying jobs policy. And in your handout, you see kind of the more verbiage that we are intending to introduce to borough. So the base policy is, if you want to qualify for this program under the housing capacity, you have to meet 2 key requirements. 15% of your units that are newly constructed have to be dedicated to rent at 90% AMI. And I'm currently working with Rachel and Carrie on finalizing the rent limits for that for next year, because this will go into if this is adopted on September 18th, this will go into effect on January 1st of 2025. And in addition, they have to keep the statutory rent increases lower than the statutory amount. So that will be a kind of a negotiated agreement between the developer and borough. The second proposed policy is the enhanced policy. It will be the base policy plus more than 15% of units, and or units rented below 90%. So we have the range of 60% AMI to 90% AMI, because our housing department has other programs for anything below 60%. Still and or the lower maximum allowed statutory rent increases, and or energy efficiency standards, and or supplier diversity. In the energy efficiency standards, we were tasked to come up with additional findings. So it's still in the proposed policy. The staff is doing the research necessary for that language. The language is adopted from the MUPTI program that the city passed in 2022. It meets established energy efficiency standards, i.e. like a LEED Silver, Energy Star certifications, etc. In doing the analysis, and also what legal has advised council through prior conversations, is that we did find that LEED certification buildings do reduce utility costs by 4%, while increasing overall rents by 10% versus non-LEED buildings. Green building standards do raise development costs between 5 and 7%. And at this time, staff cannot determine the effect of this requirement on increasing the overall rent for the rest of the non-restricted units. So what we're trying to do in the interim is work with local developers to see where those costs are burning. It's like an information gleaning session. The second is the supplier diversity standards. The proposed language is derived from the HUD adopted 23% of supplier diversity contracting. However, staff did also conduct findings that there is not local sufficient capacity currently to meet this HUD definition. This does supersede City Council's direction on May 1st, 2024, when they reiterated their timeline and process for the community benefit program. Meeting this requirement would require developers to solicit non-local firms, thereby hindering the creation of local good paying jobs policy. And at this time, staff is not able to find any data suggesting that including the supplier diversity as a criterion will lower cost. So before I get into staff alternative, the question that we're going to propose to you today is, do you have suggestions on the energy efficiency standards and or supplier diversity? But the staff alternative for at least the supplier diversity is staff believes that a robust community benefit program will contribute to the local economic growth and will contribute to the success of the economic policy as presented in the policy that you're reading today. To assist the city's effort in establishing a community benefit program, we're proposing to include a local impact question in every application that will solicit from the proposed development on what information of what firms are being currently utilized, where those firms are located, and what is the local economic impact per development, which i.e. is the construction and professional services being utilized locally. Once staff has that data, we will share that with the city's accessibility and equity department for additional program development implementation for future community benefit program. So the first question, we don't have to answer it just yet, but the first questions for AHAC is, if you would like to provide a recommendation on either one, what would that be? So what are the community returns on investment with this program? So the immediate ROI is housing production, more affordable units, and higher paying jobs. The difference between this and current exemption programs is that this is not a 100% exemption for the developer. Overlapping taxing districts under current programs forego revenue under existing tax exemptions. This program only allows the capture of 80% of new revenue. The remaining 13% goes back to overlapping taxing districts. So the way urban renewal works is it's new development that is taxed. We get the increment on that new development, but because bonds and levies are not affected, that 13% still goes to schools, parks, and public safety. The comparable length for the ROI, one of the things that we have included that if a developer wants to have more than 12 years, they have to provide a 2-to-1 return for a comparable length for our stakeholders, which is the overlapping taxing districts. So what that looks like is if you get a tax annual credit for 15 years, by year 30, it should be a 2-to-1 return of what was given to the developer. We heard that through the MUPTE community stakeholder feedback of the exemptions are taken away from schools, parks, county, and what we're trying to do is meet the immediate need of housing affordability, but ensure that our stakeholders and investors, which are our taxing districts, also benefit over the long term. The good paying jobs policy did not change from June 5th, but it's the identified target sectors, which is listed in your policy. Ben Timpson and the Economic Development Division is currently conducting a target sector analysis. And in 2025, we will ask council Borough to adopt that instead of just the basic target sector, which we have identified through the enterprise zone that's currently managed by EDCO. In addition, we require them to create 5 new jobs and an average annual salary of $72,000. We are providing an exemption for childcare services in this policy, so they'll be able to access this if they cannot meet either the 5 jobs created or the annual salary, because we understand that childcare directly affects livability in terms of housing affordability and employment. So we're making that exception at least for year 2025. In the policy, you'll see, and I won't belabor this point, but there are program parameters that are established by ORS 457, plan documents established and stuff like that. We have to go through a consideration process, but that'll be all on staff. There will be a process for public involvement, and I'll be working with Rachel to see where AHAC falls in on how you want to participate in this program moving forward. But we will be adopting the administrative guidelines between September 19th and January 1st. So we have time to develop and flesh out some of the processes. So the policy benefits for both affordability and employment. The annual rebate can be used for fee allocations, which is SDCs and permit fees, and also an annual rebate. It just depends on the capacity of our finance department utilizing the SDCs, but also what is the return that the developer is getting. So for example, if the participating in this program makes the developer or the property manager lose $200,000 a year in rent, if they get $400,000 back in the tax credit, because we're also incentivizing just unit production, they can use that extra $200,000 to pay off their SDCs. So we're working on that with the finance department to put pen to paper on that one as well. We haven't added important additions that we want to call out. It was strongly requested that we add in a dislocation policy, and we have worked with legal and also some examples of adding that into the actual policy. So for example, new developments proposed on occupied properties, whether that is a residential or a commercial, they will be required to provide a plan for relocation and assistance prior to any approval of plan document or development agreement as required by state law or federal law. So what that looks like is if somebody is currently residing on a property that is intended to be redeveloped, they have to provide either a strongly adequate ability to find comparable living situations or provide assistance to move if they need to move quicker. There will be an annual compliance that all program participants, but I think you understand what annual compliance is. Rachel and her team already do that. We're going to factor that into their work in the next 3 years. And then also the administrative policy. Borough staff, like I said, will create the policy between September 19th and January 1st that will detail like standard operating procedures for staff. What does the application look like? How does the financing work, et cetera? So first question obviously goes back to the energy efficiency standards and supplier diversity, but the overall question is, would AHAC like to provide a recommendation to Bend Urban Renewal Agency for this consideration?
Chair, how much time do we have for questions? That was
We
several
actually-
bits of information.
Yes.
She
yeah.
said 10 minutes, so I
I
was like.
said 10 minutes, but guess what? I was wrong because I didn't do my math right. I was looking at the wrong one. We have time. So we have about 17 more minutes.
Oh, goodness.
Yes.
All right.
Great.
So what do we want to do first? We want to ask questions. Does everybody have questions? Okay. Let's start on this side. Any questions, John?
So my question is just to clarify the difference between these three. So the lowering rents based policy versus the enhanced policy, is the enhanced policy the one that would add the energy and the supplier?
So to clarify that, so the base policy is you have to qualify for that. So you have to participate at the bare minimum, 12 years at this affordability rate and percentage. If, for example, a development comes in and says, what could we get if we did 20% of those units? Then staff would have the ability to negotiate that with that
Higher
rate.
rebate.
Yeah.
And then the rebate for the jobs is completely different calculation.
Correct, and
It
it,
doesn't involve thresholds of affordability and.
but it does require a threshold of an average annual salary of that new employment of 72,000. In the policy document, you see that 72,000 directly correlates with the affordability of a multifamily unit rent. So we're trying to synchronize the efforts between employment development and housing affordability.
Thank you.
A couple of questions, and then also wanted to just pull some pieces out of the Ben Chambers letter. First, if we could start with the good paying jobs incentive, which we think is extremely well intended and will be helpful. I think the concern is, by the chamber, and I think some others, is what about other industries where that's not a feasible or realistic salary for anyone? What can be done? Can this be scaled so we're not leaving entire service industries out of this?
Mm-hmm. So one of the requests from Councilor Riley was, how do we incorporate neighborhood services, which could be retail, local industries like restaurants, food manufacturing, et cetera. For 2025, we are adopting the EDCO, but we are actively currently working through Ben's team, which is the local sector and target sector analysis, to identify neighborhood services and how to adequately use data to further that policy request. So yes, to answer your question, we are currently working long-term to how do you provide this for more businesses in the community? So if you want an existing business that has an average salary of 51, how would we get them to the 72? We are actually working on that.
Again, I think it's really well intended. I just am concerned about how that's going to land with many business owners and employees who are not seeing themselves in this.
When you said working towards, what's the timeline for that?
So my last conversation with Ben, they intend to have the draft local target sector analysis in October with presentation to council sometime late winter. So
Before the January timeline.
But
Okay.
this is a resolution being adoption, so this will be a simple addition that if Borough desires to include the neighborhood services or any other gleaned information from that report, we just bring that back to them and we change it. Because we intend, this is my intention, is to have 3 application process periods per year, and this is not just one time for 2025. And we've been very clear with our developers and business community that what you see in January is a starting point. And by the end of 2025, it could be a dramatically different program based on, because we want to use the data that we presented to you today to also to use continued data to make informed decisions moving forward.
Start somewhere.
Yeah.
And then next, I was also looking at the policy documents that we have for this meeting. In particular, the supplier diversity and energy efficiency. And I believe it, for context, there have been some iterations of proposals since you came before AHAC before. And so my understanding is there's been some movement and kind of pulling back on some of these policies, but the energy efficiency that's referenced in the policy, if I'm reading the right document, relates to energy efficient appliances, not LEED certification.
So so in your policy document, that is not the proposed language, because I know there have been 3 reiterations since you've seen the one that we've had. So the current proposed language that council will get tomorrow meets established energy efficiency standards, including but not limited to LEED, Silver, Energy Trust of Oregon, all the way down to Energy Star appliance certifications. So we're leaving that up to the developer. If Borough wants to adopt this into the policy, we're leaving that up to the developer to determine what kind of certification they'd like to use. But the goal is still that it cannot raise rents on the overall units. So we don't want to subsidize 15 while the other 85 have to take. Yeah, the other portion has to subsidize the 15. We don't want to, you know, how you do the balloon, you do something good here and it expands the price over here.
So I think, you know, with both, you know, supplier diversity and clearly energy efficiency are both desired and ideal. I think part of the concern is wanting to have as much flexibility for this program to get it off the ground and not being, you know, not being too stringent on these expectations. We want this to we need it to succeed. So I think, you know, again, just channeling what's in this public comment, really advocating for the broader flexibilities for this. And then let's see how it goes and make adjustments. But I think I'll stop from there. You have my other colleagues an opportunity. Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
I did have a question. I'm still a little hazy on the good paying jobs policy. For that one, is that like $72,000 salary average? How is that salary calculated? Is that like from the jobs that are created after the development is done? And then that number, is that calculated from the average of the jobs that are created? So if like somebody was getting paid a lot and somebody was getting paid very little, that would still qualify the.
Yeah, so if you're not familiar with the enterprise zone, this is kind of a modeled after that, because when we were initially crafting this policy, we thought due to the rising income qualifications for the city of Bend, that the enterprise zone was going to be eliminated. We've got some time before another readjustment happens on that one, so the enterprise zone is safe. But we're mimicking this because not all areas of Bend qualify for the enterprise zone. And so to answer your first question, is it the average annual salary of the new jobs? Yes. Does it prevent somebody getting paid $200,000 and the next person getting paid $45,000? No, at this time.
Is it something that you guys are considering at all in the policy?
Probably if that is a request from any advisory board, then yes, we'd be more than happy to take that in. But what we've done is just cut and paste the current existing enterprise zone policy and placed it in this. But if it is a desire of any community advocacy group in the future, after we kind of see what is happening in the market, that we could say maybe 72 is a little too aspirational, but maybe we start helping people. But what our hope is, the way that tax rebates work, Most of the time, commercial and industrial developments are assessed much higher than residential units. So they're going to get a larger tax rebate. We're hoping that they use that rebate to pass it on to their employees. So it's kind of like the rent aspect. We're giving you the rebate for the rent. We're expecting not necessarily a dollar for dollar application to the rent, but we do want that 15% and 90%. Here, we're hoping the same thing. Pass it off to your pay for your employees, because we know that it's more than just payroll, it's benefits, et cetera. And maybe that's something we also include in the future reiteration. Is it $72,000 package or is it salary?
I'll hold my question. Oh, do you have it?
I don't think I do.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
A question on the supplier diversity. You go back to your slide that noted that not sufficient local capacity. Wouldn't adopting a program like this tend to strongly encourage additional supplier diversity coming into the marketplace?
Yes, to simply answer that, but there are currently 56 businesses registered through the state out of 21,000 in the city of Bend that are registered supplier diversity, and not all of them are in construction and design. So some are like in landscaping and others are just in design. And so what I'm proposing, at least to kind of balance the request, but also meet the community need of a supplier diversity program, is to use the first year to start gleaning that data. And then if we see that there are actually more people than we thought, or at least not registered through the state, we can give that information on to the city to further develop that program. Once the city does adopt the community benefit program, we are more than happy to bring that back to Burr and say, the city now actually has an official program. Would you like to adopt it into your policy? So it's like a chicken and the egg. It could help, but is it going to necessarily be effective in the first year? I don't know that question or that answer.
But it sounds like to include it in the first year would certainly complicate the implementation of this process.
No.
Okay.
Being honest with you, no, it wouldn't, but what I am suggesting is once we collect that data, we could see where we're lacking. And then, because Allie and her team on at least the employment growth has talked about a workforce development component with this program. So it's like, start somewhere, but we've got a lot of runway to go with what I think the community overall desires.
All right. And then a brief question on the dislocation policy. I haven't gotten to read into that in depth. Is that in the most recent batch of documents that we have?
No.
Or with that?
No.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but that is actually verbiage that is in the new proposed policy. So just so you know, in urban renewal, we are required by law in our plan documents to have a dislocation policy. So we knew it was going to be there no matter what, but in order to satisfy, I think, the request of Borough, but also to make it very clear to the development community that you can't just buy property and kick people off, there is a requirement that we're proposing. So we've been more than happy to put that in. So that is the proposed language for the dislocation.
So that is the total language there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That seems quite general as a comment.
Well, in urban rule, we follow ORS 457 and it lists what is a requirement of dislocation.
Okay, yeah, so referring to the ORS, right?
Yeah.
I was just curious. Great, thank you. No other questions, Chair.
Allison, do you have anything? No? Okay. I just had two questions and they're pretty general. The lead percentages, the 4% savings to the yep, you're getting there. Yeah. Does that change over time at all? Like after a certain amount of time? Does it slip at all? It
Yeah,
does.
so in your report, you see that older developments are oftentimes more cheap to rent than newer developments. That's always going to be the case, no matter if they're LEED certified or not. The question that we're asking today is, at least not to you, but in general, as a theory question, if we're trying to lower rents tomorrow, is this going to be effective at doing that? And by year, I think 11, it becomes cheaper for both the tenant and the building owner, but for the first 11 years, it fluctuates, right? It depends on the developer.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other one was related to ROI, and I haven't totally dove into the documents that you sent over or that we have. But what is the expected percent increase in production? Immediate ROI housing production. More affordable units. Do we know that?
So for example, we have a applicant, well, there's no such thing as an applicant currently, but an interested party that would be more than happy to build 69 units next year.
Okay.
Because I think everyone understands right now the market is not conducive to development, but it's definitely not conducive to more affordable units. So the market's not naturally producing affordability. And so we're trying to, if people take advantage of this, we know that we'll get units immediately.
All right. Then you had the first comment or question you had for us was, there it is. Do we have a recommendation first? I want to put that out there. Like, do people on this committee feel passionate about putting forward a recommendation related to this?
In general or specifically? Because I have 3 asks. These
have
2 and
3
the
asks? Okay.
these
Yeah,
2
these
and the
2 and then the
overall
big
one.
Yeah, I'm asking the overall.
Okay,
Overall right now.
okay.
I don't know if there's interest on the committee to sort of unpack the requirement on energy efficiency, particularly given that it will raise development costs. That's a concern of mine.
Did you want to talk about that more?
Yeah, I'd like to
Okay.
hear other people's views, maybe from the developer perspective on that.
I mean, I might lean on Ian from the architect world, but to me, the standards that you're outlining from a developer perspective are not that hard to meet. For example, when we do affordable housing, multifamily, we've been LEED Platinum, a high bar, but I don't know that world that well in terms of.
I'd say it's certainly achievable. There's some additional cost. I think there was a table, the table of rent burdened groups by percentage. As you move towards the left on that chart, yeah, that chart right there. So it's table 3 in your document, if you can pull that up. I don't know if you have that slide available to you.
I don't have it on the computer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for those looking at the documents here, for table 3, the further you get to the left-hand side, the more challenging it is. Partially that's just the way everything is. But I would say specifically to those kinds of asks, it makes projects trending to the left-hand side of that table more difficult to execute. And knowing that, for example, most of your projects that are going for LEED Platinum are not aimed, not predominantly aimed at 40% studios. I'd say remodels of existing buildings, if there was, for example, an existing apartment building that a developer wanted to acquire, remodel and turn into affordable housing, that would be about as close to naturally occurring to the market giving us something like that. It would impact that project much more so than it would a new ground up project. Is that, I don't know if I'm answering your question, Heather.
Yes.
And if I'm understanding you right, Ian, so, I mean, we're trying to hit, in my opinion, the 60 to 90, right? And so it's less impactful in that range than it is at the under 30%.
I'd say yes.
Based on our conversation, I'm gonna say that we potentially would want to give a recommendation related to this. Does anyone disagree with me? That can be a letter.
Speaking specifically about the energy efficiency one?
No, the whole thing. Or is it really the energy efficiency that we're more focused
I
on?
keep thinking about our initial conversation, and what I think I heard most, if not all of us, expresses, which you also shared, is simplicity and broad flexibility. So I don't want some of these policies to undermine that overall goal. And I realize this is an opportunity to accomplish multiple interests, but we're wearing our AHAC hat.
Yeah.
So. Am I right in understanding that if we did make a recommendation to not include this criteria, that would that just be for this year, for 2025? Could it be revised in the future?
Absolutely. So my intention is in November, Borough will get an overall report of what was brought before them. They should remember, but just in case, we'd do a report, would present a report to every advisory committee that has seen this policy. And staff would be like, we actually have some recommendations for changes for year 2026. So the intention of this policy is to be a living document, that it matches the current market. Because oftentimes we're a little bit late to the table. And so we're hoping that even though we still are always going to be a year behind, that's all we're going to work on. So yeah, at any point, I mean, even in the midst of 2025, if we see that there actually are standards out there that can increase energy efficiency and affordability, we can include it in the third round of applications. But it's a resolution. It can be changed at any time.
Thank you. Thank you. We need
Chair.
to, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. My thought and certainly my recommendation would be in an overall sense that from my point of view, I believe AHAC should support the leanest version, should be in support of the leanest possible version, with the understanding that this is built around change to meet where the market's at, but supporting it going forward in the leanest possible form feels like the most efficient way to address the specific interests of AHAC that we're here to support.
Does everyone agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Would we be okay to put forth a letter to recommend that? I'm happy to work with Lynn on that. Yeah, okay, sounds great. Perfect. Thank you very much. We're gonna wrap that up and move on to our next topic.
Thank you.
Thanks, thank you.
Thank you.
So next we have really kind of a fun thing. We get to review our accomplishments, or we get to have shared with us the accomplishments of our partners in the community. So you guys have about approximately 7 minutes each. We have 3 organizations going to share with us, and Habitat for Humanity is going to be our first one on the floor.
Great.
Over to you. This is Scott. Sorry about
Hi,
that.
Scott Nordquist, the VP of Resource Development with Bend Redmond Habitat for Humanity. Thank you. This will be a little lighter. Topic. All right, next slide, please. So quick update on this past year. We sold 13 homes within the city of Bend. Right now, so I'll focus mostly on what our previous year's awards did, but I have to give some updates too on what's going on moving forward. So we have 10 homes currently under construction in Bend, 1 home repair in progress, and 27 more in various stages of pre-development. We have the Bear Creek surplus lot that we worked with you all on. We are working on another surplus property with Bend Lapine Schools. And then some of you are familiar with our Northwest Cottages project. There's an additional vacant lot and the owner decided to sell that back to us. So we're gonna be developing that as well.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So one of the 13 homes sold last year, some of you are familiar with this one as well, our Logan Ave project. So this wasn't last year's award, but this was a previous Affordable Housing Fee Fund award. And the project finished up last year. This was infill. It was an empty lot in Northeast Bend up in Boyd Acres area. Sold in October of 23. Kind of a unique one for us. It's single family detached home. We've been doing more, townhome and cottage style developments. And because it was with affordable housing fee funds, we're able to go to 100% of the area median income, which was super helpful to serve homeowners that would not have qualified for other affordable homeownership programs, and most typical affordable homeownership programs. So yeah, this was a Latino family of 5. One works at Les Schwab, one's in the service industry. They had previously been in a 2-bedroom apartment in Healy Heights Housing Works project. So the 5 of them were in a 2-bedroom. Now they are in a 3-bedroom, single-family home and very excited about it. So that was a great project. It's just an adorable little neighborhood. If you haven't been, no, you're fine.
Jumping the gun.
And then, so 12 more homes, some of you are familiar with this one as well, our 27th Street Townhomes project. This is Southeast Bend off of 27th in between Bear Creek and Reed Market. That number is not exact. I forgot to update. That was one award where the CDBG repayments of loans came back to us. So don't quote me on that number. Rachel's not here to audit me. But yeah, 12 new homes. They're all 3-bed, 2-bath. They're really functional layouts. I really like it. It's ground floor living, 3 bedrooms upstairs. Everything is built really efficiently, so they're not quite net zero, but the last few months we're seeing power bills of $13, $14 across the whole development. So even though they technically weren't quite net zero, in reality, they're pretty darn close. And to do that, we start with really efficient building envelope, advanced air sealing, which is very important with the smoke, and just general airflow. Above code insulation, these homes have triple pane windows. And then efficient systems, we have electric water heaters, all electric appliances, everything has heat pumps. And then we got grant funding to put solar on top as well. These are all permanently affordable, so these use LIFT funds. So they are on a land lease. And they sold, we've gotten into a nice rhythm of our construction where we will, work on multiple units at a time and roll our subs from one home to the other. And then we can roll our sales, and we aren't trying to coordinate multiple loan documents and sales all at once, but we can roll sales and close on 2-3 homes every month. So these homes sold over about a period of 6 months. We sold all 12 units, had a dedication for those last spring. 15 adults in here, 17 children in the 12 homes. It was a group that was significantly more diverse than Deschutes County as a whole. 8 out of 12 households are single parents. 7 out of 12 represent non-white households. And pretty typical to our Habitat homeowners right now, an average income of about $50,000 per household. So the mortgage on the 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes comes to about $1,350 a month with land lease fees, insurance, all their payments combined. And to wrap up, I want to just point out one of the homeowners that these funds helped. So this is Ashley and her kids. She was a first-generation homebuyer. She was previously living in a 1979 single wide, which she described as drafty. It wasn't insurable. It was a rough situation. She was super fortunate and excited to find Habitat, and the timing worked out really well, and they were ready to move on. She had 2 kiddos that, as they were getting older, she had boy girl that were sharing a bedroom, and she was excited to have kids in separate bedrooms and move into a 3-bedroom. And this quote from her: Habitat for Humanity made the impossible possible. I never thought I would have the privilege of being a homeowner in beautiful Bend as a single mother. Habitat gave me the hand up I needed to be self-sufficient in building a foundation for myself and my kids. We are forever grateful. And that's all I got. But happy if there's any questions on projects or other things we have coming up.
Question?
Well done.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
I'm just curious, for the project where you stated all those diversity stats, was that part of your like application process, or did that just happen organically?
Ooh, that's a great question. We work very hard on our outreach within the community. We have our own affirmatively furthering fair housing plan. So I would say that's based on long-term relationships with partner organizations. Last year specifically, this kind of follows up a multi-year process of seeing needs. Let me back up a little. We held listening sessions on barriers to home ownership. There were a lot of things that we couldn't solve, but one of the big ones was credit. So we worked with Latino Community Association and Fathers Group specifically and did credit building workshops at their organization sites. So things like that of working with folks in the community and getting them mortgage ready so that when the time for applications comes, hopefully we have more prepared folks who are coming from underrepresented communities and home ownership who are more prepared to apply for the programs and qualify for a loan.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah,
That's exciting
thanks.
stuff. Great to see you. Next up, we have
Habitat, and it is Kim Schock and Annie De La Rosa.
Thank you, Amy. Go right ahead, Kim.
Okay, so I think we're getting some help from Amy with sharing our slide deck, which I appreciate. I've got Amy De La Rosa presenting with me today. Again, I'm Kim Fishbach. I'm the Director of Philanthropy, reporting in and expressing our gratitude to all of you who have approved the funding that came to us last year in support of our case management program, which is a very integral part of what services the Inn provides the folks that come and stay with us. This particular slide that is up in front of you all now shows that last year during our fiscal year, which just ended on June 30th, we provided shelter to 1,184 individuals. You can see by the pie chart above in the blue that roughly 75% of those individuals were single adults participating in our Next Steps program, and another 25% roughly were families that stayed with us in our facility here in town. The next two pie charts give you an idea of the overall successes that the individuals had with us. In the Next Steps program, you'll see that 34% of the individuals who stayed with us actually moved on to more stable housing upon exit from Bethlehem Inn, and that in large part is due to the individualized case management that takes place with each individual to ensure that we're identifying their barriers, we're working closely with the individual to work together. It's a very collaborative process to ensure that the staff or the case manager and the resident are identifying together what the next steps need to be to allow that individual to move on to more stable housing and a more successful, stable life. So it is very much so a collaborative effort. And the same process goes on with our families. So you'll see kind of almost the opposite numbers and results with the families in our Families First program, where we have over 60% of those individuals are returning to more stable housing. And a lot of those differences between almost the opposite in terms of results, in terms of stable housing versus returning to homelessness, has to do with the number of programs and services that are available from our partners, the service partners that we work with that are intended for families. So there's more opportunity for successes for the families in that return to stable housing than single adults. That's good. We can move on. So the next slide here, this is our self-sufficiency matrix. And basically this shares with you all the 7 domains that we track and we measure resident successes are in. So that it ranges anywhere from shelter to employment to income. And is it actually job-based income? Is it SSI, SSD? There's various income forms that they are eligible for, and we're ensuring that they're receiving. This applies to health coverage. We get mental health, stability, safety, and wellness. So the information that we're going to move on to in a minute here on the next couple of frames share with you details about the successes that our residents had. So at this point, what I'm going to be doing is passing over the presentation to Annie De La Rosa. She's our data and outcomes manager, and she works very closely with the case managers to track resident successes and challenges so that we're actually able to accurately come forward and present to you all exactly how your funding is helping the people that we serve. So with that, Annie, I'll pass over to you and we can move to the next slide.
Thanks, Kim. So as Kim was explaining our self-sufficiency matrix, that is what we use to kind of track each resident's progress during their stay. So when they come in for intake, we do that assessment with them, and then we do it again when they leave to track the differences. So with those pre and post scores, we see that 54% of Next Steps residents did improve their self-sufficiency during their stay at the BI, whereas 77% of families, or 77% of our households, improved their self-sufficiency during their stay. And again, this is, in large part due to our specific and collaborative case management. And then next slide, please. So of the 54% of our Next Steps single adult residents that did improve their scores, on average, they have a 21% improvement. And that number gets a little bit higher with families. Again, they're just typically more successful. So of the 77% of households that did improve, on average, they improved their self-sufficiency by 46%. And then I will pass it back to Kim for some resident sentiments.
Okay, so one of the things that is an integral part of the ENS program here is not just the statistics and the measurement and the stats that we just presented, but we also have very strong conversations and heartfelt conversations with a lot of the individuals who are with us during their stay. They share conversations and comments about our program and how they benefited not only when they're here, but when they leave. So this, as you see, is a snapshot of a resident exit survey form where this particular individual had some positive things that they wanted to share with us. And what we've done is created an insert here of the actual form itself. But on the left, you'll see that the areas that they covered were the fact that the inn offers a safe and warm place to live. It's a clean environment with clean linens and towels. They have lockers for their secure belongings storage. It's a big issue, as you can imagine, for individuals who don't have a lot of opportunity to keep all their valuables, and that can be anything from their documentation to medication to anything that is of a belonging that really needs to be kept safe and secure. So to us, a locker may not be a big thing, but to them, having a locker with an actual lock on it is huge. We provide healthy and nutritious food. We have volunteers who are on staff helping out all the time, or on site rather, not on staff. We have a group of people that is trained in engaging with individuals that stay at the inn, and then the connections that the residents form when they are here is another important part of their stay. So in this particular case, the individual said, for the good of all concerned, I think Bethlehem Inn achieves this day today, and this particular person honors the inclusiveness that they found here. So we'll move to the next couple of slides are similar mission moments where we're just talking about, and you'll see at the bottom, additional comments. You guys are super good. Thank you again. We get gratitude and expressions of compassion all the time from our residents. And this is, again, word of thanks for helping us helping him meet the need of all the boundaries that he faced and his search for housing, as well as in being generally encouraged and positive comments being made. So
wrap it up here.
Yep. So then I think let's just really what Gwen had put together prior to her leaving was just other comments and positive thoughts here. So I think we're pretty much done. There's one more slide that is another more content heavy slide about mission moments. So I think you get the gist. Gratitude is a big part of what we share and our residents are sharing with us. And we wanted to pass that along and share it with you too. So thank you so very much for the time to present this afternoon. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you for all you guys are doing. It's really great to see this.
Thank you. So we're happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Anybody have any questions?
Nope. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for the funding. We really appreciated the support.
Amy?
And Eliza Wilson, excuse me, Eliza.
That's okay.
Presenting on.
Thank you.
Perfect. Go ahead, Eliza. Thank you.
Thanks. I think Amy, do you have my slide deck?
Gotcha.
Great.
There we are.
Thank you. Hi, all. My name's Eliza Wilson, and I'm the Director of Runaway and Homeless Youth Services for JBARJ. I'm here to share a report out of our 23-24 CBDG grant that you guys have awarded, or that you did award Grandma's House of Central Oregon and the Loft Shelter, as you will know. These funds really just go to pay for staffing for both of the shelters. You can go to the next slide. This past year, Grandma's House sheltered 30 youth families, including 34 parents, ages 14 to 24 years old, and 22 babies. The shelter remained at capacity during this grant period with a wait list. We have a total of 10 bedrooms there. So as you can imagine, there's always young people waiting to get in. You can go to the next slide. I wanted to share some generalized demographic data related to race, gender, and the percentages of youth who identify as LGBTQ, really to outline the continued disparities that we see with youth of color and LGBTQ youth experiencing disproportionate rates of homelessness in our area. We all know and understand that Central Oregon is not particularly diverse. However, as we have over the last several years, we continue to see much higher percentages of youth needing shelter that are part of those populations than we do in the general population. Of the young families sheltered at Grandma's House, 59% of the parents were white, 41% were youth of color, 91% of the parents identified as females, 8% as males, and 1% were non-binary. 24% of the parents served at Grandma's House identified as LGBTQ. Next slide. 100% of the youth served over this last year engaged in case management services, received basic need items and shelter, and 87% exited housing. Next slide. I'm going to move on to the Loft. This past year, the Loft Shelter, which is the shelter for youth ages 14 to 24, at that shelter, we sheltered 56 youth. Like with Grandma's House, the shelter remained at capacity during this grant period. Of the youth sheltered at the Loft, 76% were white, 23% were youth of color, 19% of the youth identified as female, 55% male, 26% were non-binary or transgender, 23% of the youth served at the Loft identified as LGBTQ. Next slide. 100% of these youth at the Loft received or engaged in case management services. They all received basic need items and shelter services, and 83% exited housing. JBARJ has really been working over the past year to not only improve and grow shelter capacity at the shelter, and we've done that through EO funding, but also this funding supports us to be able to do that, to increase capacity
But we've also been working locally, and I want to share this with you guys, to increase long-term housing options for homeless youth. These housing options will be available to youth by November this year. In the meantime, we've been focusing on providing housing focused case management in the shelters to get youth in our programs really ready for housing, and in turn decreasing the likelihood of them experiencing long-term homelessness or adult homelessness. With additional housing options for the youth available, we expect to serve more youth over the year, being able to move youth on to housing. So seeing shorter shelter stays and exits from shelter into housing increase. Again, thank you for the 23-24 funding, and then the funding that we've received for the law for 24-25. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eliza. Do you have any questions? Nope. All right. Thank you so much. Keep doing the good work.
Thanks.
All right. We're a little behind, and I apologize for that. Next, we have shelter accomplishments. Amy and Brooke.
We talk fast. I talk fast. Brooke is much more thoughtful. So we just wanted to come forward today and share some information about our shelter accomplishments in the last year at the direction of both council and AHAC. And I'm gonna wait for Brooke. We always center our conversation on the pet count, and we were pleased to see this year that a point in time count takes place in January. It's a census and representative of one night of houselessness in our community. And for the first time in a very long time for the city of Bend, the number of people experiencing homelessness dropped.
It's
And-
wanting to share.
I haven't met you like that.
Yeah. All of my kids are like that. Okay. And so in addition, also in Redmond, which saw an influx of services, their point in time count represented a drop as well, while Central Oregon continued to grow as far as the number. Would you mind just moving forward one slide? Oh, yeah. There we go. We can see that 959 people in Bend were experiencing houselessness on that one given night in January. Our area does include both China Hut and parts of Juniper Ridge. And so it represents not only what's happening here in town, but the surrounding areas. To see that trend down is encouraging for the work that's been directed by council and AHAC. And like I mentioned, continues to grow in the surrounding area, but Bend and Redmond dropped. We have a total of 523 beds in the city of Bend. That also includes the Loft and Bethlehem Inn that we just saw, and 216 are low barrier beds, and those are beds that are directly supported by the city of Bend. As everyone's aware, we have the 5 shelters and programs that we focus on, including Stepping Stone, which is the former Bend Value Inn on Division, 56 low barrier beds. We have the Navigation Center, which it will be back at 2nd Street, hopefully in November. It's pushed out a little bit, which is the only place in Central Oregon where you can walk up and secure a bed if you are experiencing homelessness tonight. Central Oregon Villages, which is our high barrier tiny homes on Bear Creek and 27th. And then we also have Franklin Avenue Shelter, which is 60 beds funded through the governor's executive order, primarily families with minor children and folks that are experiencing medical vulnerabilities. And then we've got Safe Parking that has 16 beds or spots in Central Oregon. We continue to participate in the coordinated houseless response, legislative efforts, and partnerships. Our directive is to maintain 505. And as I said with the previous slide, we're at 523. And we're optimistic we'll see some more safe parking in the next year. The Navigation Center continues to be utilized in its 3 different locations, Scramble, really highly. You will see the utilization is a little bit
we had some data problems in November when we made the transition over to the Rainbow Motel, just as far as how folks were counted and what program they were counted in. But just across the board continues to be really heavily utilized. 50 beds of live-area shelter are at the 2nd Street construction location, and then we're using overflow at the Rainbow in the front to meet those other 50 beds. In the course of the last year, they provided 34,532 shelter nights with an overall utilization rate of 94%. They serve more than 537 unique individuals. And the day services, when we first brought this idea forward, we thought it was going to be 40 unique individuals. I think we budgeted at 44 per month, is at 325 per month. Of that, 31 people went to permanent housing and 57 went to temporary housing. Thanks, all you. Handing it over.
The Franklin Avenue shelter has been operating a little over a year, about a year and 4 months. Is in the back building of the former Rainbow Motel. They provided 20,676 nights of shelter, which is about a 94% utilization rate. And we know with non-congregate shelter, sometimes it takes a night or two to turn over the room and get it ready for the next person. And they are using the coordinated entry system, which also takes some time to call those folks and bring them in. They served 198 unique individuals, including 86 households with minor children. And they supported 23 individuals in transitioning to permanent housing and 1 to temporary housing.
I will add with both Stepping Stone and Franklin with that utilization rate. One of the things that we have been surprised at was the medical fragility of a lot of that population. And we have found when we have to turn those rooms after somebody has passed away, or after someone has had to go to a higher level of medical care, that is another time where we need to call in some extra resources, and the city does pay for that to make sure that the room is habitable for the next family. So sometimes those kinds of services can take up to a week to get into the room, and then another couple of days to replace some things if they need to be replaced.
Stepping Stone, which is located on Division and operated by Neighbor Impact, provided 16,421 nights of shelter at about an 80% utilization rate. They served 99 unique individuals, supported 14 transitions to permanent housing and 12 to temporary housing, and about 56% of their participants engaged in case management.
With low barrier shelter, people are not required to engage in case management in order to get services, but staff is always trying to build rapport to get folks to engage.
Central Oregon Villages provided 4,715 nights of shelter, also at about an 80% utilization rate. They served 38 unique individuals. These were primarily single person households, and 25 of those households had a medically vulnerable individual, and they supported 9 transitions to permanent housing. And then safe parking. There's 4 sites with 12 spaces and 16 beds. The Central Oregon Villages is the 2 pallet shelters, and they provided 690 nights of shelter at a 93% utilization and supported 1 person in transitioning to permanent housing. And then Reach operates the other 3 sites across town. They provided 4,009 nights of shelter at a 94% utilization and supported 12 transitions to permanent housing.
Yeah.
Okay, all in all, the city supported shelters and safe parking provided over 81,000 nights of shelter at about an 89% utilization and supported 160 transitions to permanent and temporary housing. And across the programs, they averaged 85% of households engaged in case management. Questions?
Can you go back 1 slide, please?
Yes.
Ian's doing some math.
question while he's doing his math. I'm not familiar with the term low barrier or high barrier bed. What is that?
So low barrier
Mhm.
is take you as you are. You can come in with your pets at our shelter. You do not have any sobriety requirements for entering. You cannot use on the property or in the program. But if you come in, nobody's going to give you a drug or alcohol test. There's
Okay.
not a background check. And so we open that door through the programs and hope people will engage and then move into some kind of more structured environment. But it's a really meet you where you are.
Awesome. Thank you. And all this is really encouraging. Thanks.
So Brooke, if my math is semi-accurate, that looks like a rounding error away from 225 persons served on average every night.
That's a good question. I think so. We don't typically count. Oh, I see what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, I was like, we don't typically count unique individuals, but yes.
Right.
Yeah,
Person
correct.
served per night.
Persons served
Yeah.
per night.
Okay. 225 is a lot. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's great. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, as always.
Okay, next we have, we're going to open a public hearing. I'm not opening it yet. I'm just letting you know. For the Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Board paper. And we will open that hearing. We will hear the staff presentation, then open that for public comment, close the public comment, then we'll deliberate. And if we want to have a motion, just giving you guys a heads up on what's going on. So I'm going to open the public hearing related to the caper now.
Hi, everyone. Lynn McConnell. Sorry to be virtual today. I had a last minute call from the school. As you all know how that happens as school comes back into session. So I am home with the sick one. But thanks for your patience with me being virtual. So the CAPER, or Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, measures the performance of our CDBG funding each year. And this year's CAPER adds up the people and households served based on the goals that we set in the 2019 to 2023 consolidated plan. So you all remember we have a number of big goals. Everything you fund with CDBG has to fit into one of those goals and then has to lead to a benefit to a low or moderate income person. So really great stuff happened thanks to you all and to City Council and to our amazing partners. For every dollar spent, we leveraged an additional $8 of funds outside of the CDBG program to create that project. So lots of money coming into this through the use of CDBG. We have served over 2,700 folks in the last year, all low and moderate income community members, 12 down payment assistance awards, 6 new homes constructed and sold, and 2,719 people who were homeless received shelter with this funding. So pretty incredible to think about how much we're able to do with relatively small award. I think that is the extent of the presentation we have. You all are able to build off of. It's really a lot of what you heard today from our applicants and great partners about the work they had been doing. These are just the numbers to back that up. So really kudos to you all for choosing through some very hard meeting times who received the funds. It went to great use. Any questions for staff?
No questions, looks like.
And I will say we have not received any public comment on the CAPER thus far.
Okay, thank you.
And none today.
None online. And I don't think there's anyone in here, but I will open it up for any public comment in the room. No, okay.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, about it. Closing public comment and closing the hearing. And then we will
Deliberate for a motion.
deliberate for a motion. Yeah, what are we deliberating exactly?
There's not really a question to be answered here. It's just, do you accept the CAPER? But you all can give yourself pats on the back if you would like to. That's totally appropriate at this moment.
Chair, I move to approve the 2023 and 2024 Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report paper.
I'll second. This is Heather.
All in favor? Motion passed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I believe we have Brooke.
Well, this will go smoother. Sharing this presentation. Okay, Brooke O'Keefe, Shelter Coordinator. I am here filling in for Melissa Kamanya, who's your Affordable Housing Coordinator, to present the next topic of the Take on Fair Housing Conversations. The first topic was Richard Rothstein's The Color of Law, and the next one will be Greg Colburn's Homelessness is a Housing Problem. And I'm going to walk you through how to get there. So there is a QR code on the screen, and I also have the handouts. And this will take you to the City of Bend webpage. You're going to scroll down just a little bit, and there will be a link. Click that link, and it will take you to this beautiful one-pager, which includes options for watching videos, listening to information, or I think the book is also available at the library. So that is another option to access the material. And this includes the link to the Building a Better Bend lecture that he did just a few months ago here. Any questions on how to get to the information? Perfect.
Thanks, Brooke. Looking forward to that one.
Just for you.
This will be for discussion at next meeting, is that right?
Yes, so I have 1 month. Okay, yeah. So 1 month to review. All right, and next we have staff report.
So I'm going to lead off on this one, and then Amy, if you want to jump in with your info in a sec, that would be awesome. Wanted to let you all know that Dina has been working hard on the AHAC webpage and sort of retooling it a little to make it a little more streamlined and easier to find old meeting info, etc. So go ahead and visit that at your convenience, check it out, and give us feedback if you have any for how that website works for you. We are going through a larger website retool process, really the entire thing. So housing will be somewhere on the list, I think, this spring to have all of our pages retooled. But for now, just AHAC is getting polished up a little. Also, you all received a survey via Dina from the city manager's office, just about who you are and what's going on with you as a committee member. That is due, I think, early next week. So if you are able to look for that and complete it this week, that would be wonderful. If you can't find it, get in touch with Dina or me and we can get it to you. January, we are changing our meeting date. The first council meeting of the year would be on the holiday, which they will not do. And so they are taking our meeting, which is the second Wednesday of the month, going to second and fourth, which means that we are proposing going to the third Wednesday of the month. And Dina, I should have that date right in front of me, but we will send it all out to you third Wednesday of the month. So 1 week later in January, instead of what we usually do, which is second week. Council always wins. And this is going to be great introduction, potentially some new members, etc., for their first meeting. Wanted to let you all know, where is everyone today? 3 staff from the housing department are hosting a conference here in town. It's the acronym is probably the worst ever. It's called the NOACADEM Conference. That stands for the Northwest Community Development Managers Association, something along those lines. So everybody who manages CDBG and comparable programs in the Northwest comes together once a year. And Bend had the honor of hosting it. It just happened to conflict with AHAC this time. So that's where the rest of staff are right now. We're proud to host that conference and show off some of our work. They're doing tours and all sorts of great stuff. And then wanted to hand it off to Amy. Do you want to do a recap of the joint meeting, or we never talked about whether I was doing that or not?
I wasn't there, so.
Okay. So I'll give the quick recap is that the county commission and city council met last week and authorized staff to proceed with developing a plan for what we're calling a safe, it's not safe, temporary rest area. Is that right? Something like that. No, temporary. It's TSA is the acronym that somebody's been using. Anyways, temporary sleeping area in Juniper Ridge. And the idea here is that parts of Juniper Ridge need to have a different solution because of fire danger, et cetera. So we are hoping to set up a temporary place for folks to rest that are currently residing in Juniper Ridge that's a little bit outside of the fire zone and can be managed a little bit more clearly. So that is what the resolution was of the joint meeting. It's definitely worth watching if you all are interested in sort of how that decision was made. It's available on the county website. I don't know if anybody else, if we have counselors in the room or if anybody else wanted to comment on that who was there, but what I told you all know too.
You did.
Yeah.
Come on down.
Come on down.
Hi, Megan Perkins, City Councilor. Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that was pretty remarkable about the meeting is that oftentimes coordination between the city and the county has been a struggle, and it was a unanimous decision. And I think there were some values that we all agreed we wanted to see with this safe rest, safe, I forget what we settled on for the verbiage. Piece of land in Juniper Ridge, and you know, the first of course is safety for everybody. The second being that there needs to be access to services, otherwise this isn't going to really work if we're just saying yeah you can be here and now we're going to ignore you and go about our days. And I think the third thing that was a real common value that we wanted to see is we really wanted to get some understanding of the data, like the people that are there and when they do go somewhere, where are they going, and you know, really start trying to understand like where are the gaps that we have in services post this type of safe rest facility, and also just understanding the progress of people and following up with them to see, you know, to understand our community better. And happy to answer any other questions about it. But we're still kind of in this phase of understanding. I know that we are going to talk about it a little bit more at our coordinated houseless response office meeting next Thursday, which is I think at 11 o'clock.
Welcome, Councilor Campbell as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the meeting, I honestly, I may still be in shock. This has been years. It has been Jason Kropp, our state representative, and it has been Megan Perkins, her own self, who has worked for years. I mean, it really has taken years. There was a false start, had to get back on our feet and start again. And again, it was Megan and so many of our excellent staff people with patience I can't even imagine, frankly, and just such perseverance. This, I really think this is the biggest space where we have just a gap. Not, you know, 12 spaces. Is it in safe parking? 18, you know, is all we've had so far. And I mean, this is so good, I believe, for our first responders, our fire department, all of the service providers who do such excellent work trying to reach out to people who right now are just dispersed and move around. I mean, I really can't say enough. This is honestly years of work trying to get to exactly this spot. And I'm just so grateful and so hopeful that it really is true. And so thank you, just absolutely everybody who worked on this.
Anybody? Thank you, both counselors. If folks have questions about how this is going to run, we are developing, I'll say, plans between, you know, as we go. So all the questions are not yet answered, but you are more than welcome to reach out to staff, and we will do the best we can to provide you with the info we have. If we have it. If not, we will tell you when we're going to have it and do the best to get you there. So please let us know if you're hearing concerns or comments from your networks and want more information. We're happy to help with that. I believe that's it for staff report, unless staff in the room have anything else.
We're good. All right, so then we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Well done, Chair.
Thanks. Thank you, Housing Committee. Your work as well. Today is not the day that I'm